Hi there, my name is JD from Studio 2105. Welcome back to MixStream Online and a brand new episode of Weekly Update Wednesdays. Yes, I know this week's video is late again and I'm really sorry about it. It's been incredibly busy, incredibly crazy around here in the studio. We are in the middle of the fasting month of Ramadan, one of the busiest seasons of the year. Well, I'm definitely not complaining about it. It is a good problem to have, okay? Right, so without further ado, let's head on down to the video. If you're new to this channel, a warm welcome to you. Please head on down and click on the subscribe button. Don't forget also to click on the notification bell so that you'll be updated every time I upload a brand new video. A big shout out and thank you to all the patrons who help to support the channel financially. If you want to do so, head on down to www.patreon.com/studio2105 and check it out, okay? Don't forget as well to sign up to the email list. Sign up today and get a bunch of free stuff. For example, my personal snare drum and my reverb IR libraries. I love getting questions and hearing your feedback from every single one of you out there. Everyone comes from different skill set levels. Some may be just starting out, some may be just doing this as a hobby. Some of you may have been doing this for many years and making a living, making a professional career out of it. This week's question comes from a mix engineer who's just kind of getting into the business and wants to find out a little bit more about this question. My client is asking for mastered stems for live backing track purposes. The mastering process reacts differently depending on the stems. How do I go about delivering these? This is a great question, and if you are just starting out in the business as a mixing engineer, this is very important information to know. Now, the first thing that we need to establish clearly is the definition of the word stem, okay? Stems are not tracks. Repeat that again. Stems are not multi-tracks, okay? Stems are stereo submixes of a group of tracks. So for example, you have all the different individual tracks that make up the drums, kick, snare, hat, overhead toms, room mics, etc. Group them together and then you make a stereo submix that is called a drum stem mix. You can also have a guitar stem where you have all the guitar tracks, right, submixed into a stereo track, a vocal stem, and so on and so forth, okay? Tracks on the other hand are the separate individual parts. That one we all know. There's been many videos that's been done on this already, and I personally as well made this video on this very subject as well. It is one of my pet peeves and I rant about it all the time. Go ahead and check it out, okay, after you watch this video. First of all, always make sure that you check with your clients, or maybe if you're working with other producers or engineers, as to what exactly they want to be delivered, okay? Sometimes when they say stems, they actually mean tracks, and then sometimes when they say tracks, they actually mean stems, okay? So there is often a lot of confusion. From your question, I can assume though that it's pretty clear that your client is asking for stereo stems for their live shows. Having these stereo stems is great because it gives them the flexibility to, let's say, maybe mute, or maybe they want to remove certain parts, or maybe even rearrange the track depending on the needs of the show. In this kind of situation, it's going to be ridiculous, right, to provide your client, the band, with dozens or tens or maybe hundreds of tracks to mix for a live show. They don't want that, trust me, okay? All right, they do not want to be managing dozens or hundreds and hundreds of tracks. So in this situation, this is where these stem mixes come into play. However, there probably is a little bit of misinformation going on as to whether or not, because your client is asking you for mastered stems. So live backing tracks, do they have to be mastered or not? First of all, let's think about this. Now, a compressor or a limiter on the master bus reacts differently according to the signal that is running through it. So for example, right, it will typically respond, okay, a compressor will typically of course respond to the loudest element in the mix. This is typically going to be the drums, more specifically the kick and the snare. Therefore, if you just take the vocal stem and then just run it through the processor, it doesn't work the same way. It's going to respond and react in a totally different way than it does with the full mix. Same thing, if you just take a keyboard stem or take a guitar stem and you run it through that same processing, everything's going to go out of whack. The entire balance of your mix, when you try to combine the stems again, it's going to be off. Everything's going to be thrown off. It will sound nothing like the original mix. In theory, alright, when you take the various stem mixes and you sum it back together, you are supposed to get the original mix. But if you are running the stems and trying to run them through the same mastering processing, for that reason alone, it doesn't work. Everything will be off balance, okay? You know, things like, for example, the softer, lower level stuff is all going to be brought up. It's going to be louder in volume, in level, and you know, the mix just gets thrown out of whack. Now, secondly, and very, very significant, is that a master track sits at around -12 to -10 LUFS typically, and in the analog realm, that's equivalent to +6 to around +8 dBu, which is a very hot signal for the input of any mixing console. Remember, here we are talking about a live performance situation, okay? I'm sure if you have, tried to, let's say, take a playback a track, a master track from, let's say, a CD player or something like that, that outputs line level into a console. The signal is usually very, very hot. It almost always needs to be attenuated, right, via pad switch. You need to engage the pad, either -10 dB, 20 dB or so, just for it to be usable, okay, on the mixing console. Now, it is for these very reasons actually that, especially for live backing tracks, are not mastered. We do not master stems. We just export or we print the stems as is, okay? We take these stems, then we load them into maybe a DAW or maybe to a hardware sequencer, depending on what your client is using. Then that is mixed and then that is output to the front of house, into the house. Another option, if you want to consider, is to have the client decide what do they want on the backing tracks. So for example, if they want this part muted, that part muted, do that, and then you export it. This way, you can keep the relative balances of all the different parts in the mix intact. At the end of it, you just want to apply some very, very basic mastering just to ensure that all the various tracks, for example, if you have, 10 songs and you have the backing tracks exported for all 10, just make sure all of them are at the relatively equal and same level, so that when you're sending and feeding to the house, the FOH engineer is not going to have a nightmare of the time writing all the different levels, okay? So that's where you need to pay attention and apply a little bit of mastering sense. Sometimes this simple approach is actually preferable, because for example, if you don't have a laptop, you don't have a multi-track DAW or maybe a hardware sequencer, you can just load it up on your smartphone or any kind of mobile device and play back the backing track from there. Now, whichever method you choose to employ, remember, okay, that this sort of work, it actually falls outside the scope of mixing and mastering. It takes up studio time, so you will want to always factor that rate in and charge your client accordingly, okay? They have to understand that this is actually additional work. Every time if you need to print the separate stems, or if you need to print, the backing tracks, it takes time, right? And time, of course, costs money. Now, the only exception to the case is if you have already agreed to do this, in advance. Maybe this is part of the deal that you do, that you're going to be mixing and mastering and also providing the stems. Make sure, of course, ideally you have all this agreed upon in writing, okay? Now, if you feel generous, okay, you can also create a click track, okay? Now, although actually, to be honest, this is pretty increasingly unnecessary nowadays, because pretty much every DAW will have their built-in click track, and even a hardware sequencer, okay, will have a built-in metronome or a built-in click as well. That can be, usually either fed to the headphones only, so that only the drummer hears it, so to speak. Technology has really come a long way, and it's super easy and super convenient nowadays to be playing with live backing tracks. Hey, let me know if you want to learn a little bit more. Maybe I'll do a tutorial video on how to prepare live backing tracks, okay? If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments below, okay? Hopefully this little piece of advice helps you. And if you're a mixing engineer, if your clients do ever come to you asking for mastered stems, right, you will know how to answer and you know what to deliver to them in the future. Okay, this brings us to the end of this week's video. Thank you so much once again for watching. Now, I would love to hear your questions and your feedback. Please leave them down in the comments below. If you found this video useful and informative, please do leave a like, you share, and if you haven't done so, click on the subscribe button and notification bell. Now, if you want to help to support the channel financially, the creation of content such as videos like this, our weekly live streams, the MixStream live streams, the Ask Me Anything, and other tutorial videos, right? Do consider signing up to become a patron. www.patreon.com/view2105. Check out the various Patreon subscription tiers and the perks and benefits that come along with it. Till next time, see you again in another video. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Happy recording and mixing. Peace, love, and music.